Okay, guys, welcome back. Hopefully you had a great week. I'm back from my trip in Colombia, and just a lot of thoughts in my mind. I'm probably going to devote a separate video to this of kind of differences between Colombia, or at least the part I've been, and the United States, and some other thoughts on kind of quality of life over there, cost of living, quality of life. But that's for a separate video. Today I want to talk about, recently about your calling. How to find out what do you want to do for life? How do you want to make money? Recently, a lot of people have been coming to my kind of mentoring practice, coaching practice, and have been asking me, younger people probably after college, some high schoolers, some college, even some kind of mid-level professionals that, they thought they had a great job, they thought they love what they do, and all of a sudden they kind of, they feel drained, they don't feel excited by the job, and just they kind of feel burned out. And then younger people, let's say after college, asking me what profession should I go to, so I'm going to be able to pay my bills, my student loans, so I can have a good living. So definitely a lot of confusion here recently. I mean, not only recently, it's like one of those big life's questions. But recently now, because with the whole AI thing going on, it's basically taking a lot of the entry jobs. I have my previous video, I talked about how my younger friends, or maybe children of some of my friends, cannot find jobs, entry jobs after college. Very, very difficult right now. I don't know if you guys know it, but like unemployment rate of younger grads right now is somewhere in the teens, right? So you went to 4-year university, college, you paid tuition, probably close to 100,000 all in, at least, assuming you didn't get any breaks, and you cannot find a job. So that kind of sucks, right? So what I want to talk to you about today is how to choose your calling, and tell you a story how I chose mine. I think when you choose a calling, and I don't call it a career, I don't call it a job, because a job is something that you do mostly for money, and you kind of just like, if you think about some other things you're going to be doing when the job is done. So that's not what I'm talking about. In an ideal situation, you love what you do, you kind of like act, work in your area of excitement, in your area of competence, in your area of passion. That's when job no longer feels like a job, but feels like a passion, feels like a calling, okay? The way I think about it, whatever you choose has to go back to your childhood, I guess. The answer, a lot of our answers to our issues, problems, questions lie back in our childhood. I'm going to tell you my childhood story, so how it relates to that. When I was 6.5 years old, my parents decided to send me to a boarding school, me and my brother. I have a twin brother. And boarding school, not because I was a bad kid. I know some people have here in the States, they have this thing, boarding school. It's what kids who misbehave are being sent there. That's not the case. It was just a very good school. It happened to be 2 hours away, 3 hours away from my house, and it was just not feasible to drive there every day. So I would came there Monday morning, and it would go back Friday afternoon. You can imagine, I'm 7-year-old. I mean, kind of little kid still. And I'm being sent away to this, school that has, kids that are older than me. Obviously, I'm terrified. I have my brother, but that's about it. So we were also dorming there, right? It's a boarding school, so you dorm there. You have 3 meals a day, and kind of like you could see like the older kids would bully you a little bit, right? The things that were happening, not in the United States. We're going back, 35 years ago. Back in the Soviet Union, like if you know where I'm from, and again, Soviet Union, Russia, same thing. A tough place where sort of like if you're weak, you kind of being preyed upon. So older boys started picking up on me and just teasing me and bullying me, and it's been going on for days and weeks, and just my life is becoming miserable. One day before going to sleep, we're lying in our bedroom, in our dorm room, right? In a dorm room, it's not like 4 people like you have in America. It's like a big room with 40 people. And next to me, there's a kid there, maybe a year or 2 older than me. So, I'm reading a book. It was my passion. I loved reading books. And I said, "Hey, kid, what are you reading?" And I kind of looked at the book. I was reading, I think it was Three Musketeers, right? I told him, I'm reading Three Musketeers. And he said, "Well, what's that about? Tell me." So I'm like, okay, this kid is bigger than me. Probably, he's going to beat me up if I don't tell him what the story is about. So I start telling him the story the best I can. and tell him, okay, that's the story, right? And I see him listening like really like intently to this. Okay, next day, same thing repeats itself, right? I'm reading a book. He comes, say, hey, what are you reading about? I said, I'm reading about Three Musketeers, and I tell him another chapter of the book. Okay, then fast forward to a few days from there, I already have two kids. Him and his buddy came to listen to me. So every night, before going to sleep, I'm telling two boys, kind of like who are older than me, right? I'm 7, they're probably 9, 10. I'm telling them like a good night story. Fast forward 2-3 weeks from now, I already have 4 or 5 guys listening to this. Some older, some younger, and and eventually kind of the big bully, the guy who was like maybe 12, 13. He was like the kind of like the alpha male there. Beating people up, kind of taking their lunch, taking their toys, breaking things, slapping people around. And he comes over, he sees like a group of kids, by then probably maybe 10 kids sitting near me, at nighttime. Say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing here, kids? Oh, we listened to Alex telling us a little story. I'm like, oh really? Well, let me see what you got there. So he's sitting there. I'm all obviously terrified, trembling, like, oh my God, what this bully is gonna do to me. And I kind of like, and I tell the story of Three Musketeers, and he kind of looks at me. He says, interesting. But then he comes back the next day. So now, the bully and his buddies are sitting listening to my story. So by the end of probably after a month, I have probably 30 kids gathering around my bed around 9 o'clock, 9:30, and listening to story time. So why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because there's a little lesson there. Something that we like doing in our childhood, or did well, or enjoy doing. That's where the answer is buried to what we might be good at when we're grown-ups, we're adults. I don't know, let's say you like tinkering with toys, putting them together, breaking them apart, maybe you did some parts, maybe you helped your dad fix a car, maybe you help your dad do some plumbing work. Okay, there you go. There you probably, trades is your thing, Let's say, you like listening to music. Maybe you're playing the piano a little bit, You could be an artist, or you could be some other creative person, right? You could be YouTuber, you could be just, a creator. So a lot of those things. Now, so that's kind of the natural process, okay? But what happens in the middle? What happens in the middle, it's our current educational system that takes kids who are 6, 7 years old, and I'm observing it with my kids, and little by little turns them into little robots. It breaks the excitement about this. This is how you have to do. You have to sit here for 45 minutes and don't move. You'll get recess only 2-3 times per week. And little by little, I literally seen my kids from 1st grade to now 6th and 7th grade, just their kind of like excitement for the most part about life, about learning, just being sucked out of them, And I think that's a tragedy of our educational system, at least in America. Maybe there's some other systems like a Montessori or some other systems that are kind of like really foster that creativity, foster that confidence. Don't make you sit in a classroom for 45 minutes and then constantly test you to get grades, and kids' self-worth is reflected in the grade. I mean, that's to me, it's completely wrong. And I see kind of the negative effects it's having on my kids, and the kids that I come across. That basically their self-worth is defined by the grade they got. I mean, that's terrible, in my opinion, and very demoralizing. I think, and that's what happens. That's what, we start as kids, 6, 7, 8. We discover our passions, and they kind of we get broken down and kind of, conventionalized. I just invented the word, made conventional, put on a conveyor belt to finish, middle school, get good grades in high school, go to college, and then work for a corporation. Okay, so this conveyor belt that we all on or were at some point of our lives, I think got off the conveyor belt 15 years ago, and I started my own company. But that conveyor belt, basically, it's you being trained to be part of a corporation, okay? I know it sounds evil, it sounds kind of like maybe conspiratorial. I think maybe it's just not done in a harmful way, or a way of a conscious way. Basically, look, for the last 50, 60, 70 years, if you ask people, where do you get a job? Okay, I go to college, I send my resume to a few places, and that's how I get the job, okay? And people kind of like put up with this drudgery for decades. Okay, it's what you do, you pay your dues, But like I worked in many different jobs in corporate America, and 80%, at least 80%, hate their jobs, okay? Now, how do I know this? Because every morning I would I would come a little bit earlier. So I used to work for a big bank at that time. I would arrive a little bit earlier, to my giant office tower, and we had a coffee shop at the first floor. And I would just get coffee, and I would look at the faces of people coming into the tower, right, into the office building, right. So the day starting at 8 a.m., 8:30, and I would just see basically these were faces of people going to execution. I did not see one smiley face. I did not see people chatting. I just saw those really faces, like, and it's funny because the moment they walked into the building, they put that fake smile on. I'm good, I'm great, okay, I'm gonna enjoy my day here. But it was really before and after, so that would crack me up and kind of like, brighten my day in a way. And I get them, listen, I mean, that's what we've been taught to do. Go to college, get a job, earn a paycheck, save for retirement, take a couple of vacations a year, and try to do the best that you can. But that will lead to burnout. That will lead to kind of sabotaging yourself. That would lead to, you guys maybe, or people in the situation seeking all kinds of escapes, whether it's drugs, whether it's affairs, whether it's something else, because ultimately your soul, your inner being, your inner child is screaming, says, I used to love being a painter. I used to love fix cars. I used to love, telling stories. And I'll tell you how that helped me. And now I'm doing this job in the office, which I hate. Yeah, they give me lunch and they give me maybe some ping pong table, this and that, but ultimately that's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. So I want to finish with kind of bringing the story together. What me being a kid storyteller has to do with what I do right now. The first time I put my company together, and we came across an interesting project that, we didn't have enough of our money for that project, our own money, so I had to look for investors. So I thought about it. I put together, a presentation. I described the presentation, the project. I described the returns. I described the investment. I gave our background. And I just, started kind of cold calling, talking to friends and family, uncle and aunts and neighbors and classmates and their uncles and their cousins, brothers and sisters. And I would probably go see a couple hundred people. And in the beginning, it was awkward, embarrassing. What am I doing? What am I selling? Who am I even to talk to this guy? Like, what's going on? But little by little, I kind of like my old habit of telling a story, a truthful story, but being present, being confident, kicked in. So I connected my current job, and again, I just started my company, so I wouldn't call it a job, my current, profession, what I was doing, to my passion as a child to tell stories. So that was how two connected, and then something incredible happened. I really started, probably after fifth or sixth presentation, that the first five I kind of just stumbled through and kind of stuttered. But after fifth presentation, investor presentation, I really started flourishing and I started connecting with people, and money started flowing in little by little. So this is an example of how you can take your inner child, that child used to be excited about doing things, about enjoying certain activities, and connect them to your future career choice, whatever it may be, okay? That's what you call a calling. So that's it for today. I hope you found it helpful. If you guys find it helpful, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be sharing more of those insights. I'm going to be interviewing some people, I think, who are extraordinary people, even though they're simple people, but we can learn a lot from them. Okay, guys, have a great weekend. Talk to you later.